The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
Good morning here at 5 a.m. and thanks for waking up with us. I'm Natty Jansen alongside Alex Fisher.
All right, Kat, thanks so much. Our time now is 5:02 and making news around the state this morning. A group of Democrats in the state assembly this morning will announce a $400 gas rebate proposal. Lawmakers say this rebate would go to all California taxpayers, regardless if they own a car or drive a car. Lawmakers say their rebate would use $9 billion from the state's budget surplus, which is expected to be more than $45 billion. The announcement comes amid Republican calls to suspend the state's gas tax. Democrats say the rebate is a better approach because suspending the gas tax does not guarantee oil companies will pass on the savings to consumers. How soon can lawmakers make this happen? Assembly members will unveil full details of the proposal later this morning after floor session.
Consumers may soon get that gas relief, but high prices are hitting some local businesses even harder. 17's Chris Burton joins us in studio with more. Chris?
Yeah, Maddie, good morning. The average gallon of regular gas in California costs more than $5.75. That's according to AAA. And it's putting companies that rely on transportation through a, quote, crisis. The past 2 weeks at the pump might be summed up best in the words of George Wright.
It's ridiculous. It's really hurting the boss, I can tell you that.
Wright drives for Fleet Towing Services. When we caught him during a fill-up, he made his worries clear.
Fleet's hurting because of gas prices, I know that.
Across Kern County and across California, transportation companies are reckoning with gas nearing $6 a gallon.
I think small businesses are going to face what I would call an existential crisis in the next few weeks if these gas prices continue to accelerate.
For companies that rely heavily on transportation, a rise or fall in gas could be critical.
The problem is a lot of small businesses operate on thin margins. They operate on 2 to 3% profit margins, which is not a lot.
Lauren Hampton drives for Cox Petroleum Transport. To fill up an oil transport truck like his, the cost is staggering.
It's going to cost to fill up an over-the-road truck about 200 gallons of gas, pushing $6 to $7 a gallon. You can do the math right there. I mean, it's a lot of money.
And when transportation companies feel the pinch, consumers see it on the shelves.
Those guys transporting milk, it's just going to drive the milk prices higher. It's probably going to go up $2 without us even noticing.
And that crisis could last a bit longer, as Dr. Richard Gerhardt anticipates prices will stay high for at least a few more weeks. In studio, Chris Burton, 17 News.
Chris, thank you. After a passionate plea from Ukraine's president, the Biden administration is pledging more military help to help Ukraine fight off Russia's brutal assault.
The war now in its fourth week, and the UN estimates nearly 700 people have been killed. The actual number is likely much higher. NBC's Bree Jackson reports from Washington.
Good morning, Alex, Maddie. During his virtual speech, President Zelensky urged the U.S. to send more weapons to Ukraine and to enforce tougher sanctions on Russia.
I see no sense in life if it cannot stop the death.
In a passionate speech, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky appealed to America's heartstrings, comparing the crisis in his country to Pearl Harbor and 9/11.
Russian troops have already fired nearly 1,000 missiles at Ukraine, countless bombs. They use drones to kill us with precision.
Urging Congress and specifically President Biden to do more.
Being the leader of the world means to be the leader of peace.
The president's later issuing his sharpest condemnation of Russian President Vladimir Putin yet.
I think he is a war criminal.
The White House unveiling $800 million in new military aid for Ukraine, including 100 armed drones, potential game-changing technology called switchblades.
This could be a long and difficult battle.
The president has yet to sign off on Zelensky's request for fighter jets, despite growing pressure.
It's costing lives in Ukraine.
The administration has also ruled out a no-fly zone, insisting it could escalate the war. Ukraine's president telling NBC News, "We may already be in a third world war."
I believe that Russians have already crossed all the red lines when they started shelling civilians.
As Russian forces rain fire on Ukrainian cities, Putin is delivering a message of his own, accusing the West of trying to cancel Russia and showing no signs of ending the violence. Peace talks between Russia and Ukraine continue. Both sides have signaled reasons for optimism, but key differences remain. In Washington, I'm Bree Jackson for 17 News.
Bakersfield Congressman Kevin McCarthy spoke with reporters after Ukrainian President Zelensky addressed Congress yesterday. McCarthy called Zelensky's speech powerful, saying Zelensky made a strong case for the U.S. doing more to support the country.
I thought the video was one of the most moving moments in there. Made the case of the murdering of innocent people, that war crimes are being committed, that America and the world cannot sit by and ignore.
McCarthy similarly called the events in Ukraine war crimes while speaking in Kern County on Saturday.
And an update now on 3 local families whose lives have been turned upside down by the war in Ukraine. 17's Robert Price has been following their stories.
While world leaders debate the right course of action to turn back the Russian advance in Ukraine, 3 families with Kern County ties wait anxiously for hopeful developments for family members in difficult straits. One is Sergei, last name withheld for his safety, who is somewhere outside the besieged eastern Ukraine city of Kharkov, holed up in a bunker. He is the unofficial foster son of Bakersfield City Councilman Bruce Freeman and his wife Monica, who met Sergei as a 9-year-old as part of an exchange program for Ukrainian orphans, and Sergei has visited often in the last 19 years. Bruce Freeman and his 28-year-old son had been communicating sometimes multiple times a day through a texting app.
They've blown up the bridges on both sides.
But 2 days ago, Sergei said the Russians had bombed the region's power plant, and now the situation is dire. In his last 3 communiques, Sergei said the electricity is out, the water supply is off, food supplies are low, the temperature is below freezing, and as of Tuesday, his phone was losing its charge. The Freemans have not heard from Sergei since. Bakersfield orthopedic surgeon Timothy Galan, a native of Ukraine, said his family is still holed up at a relative's farmhouse in a small village in northwestern Ukraine. They fled the capital city of Kiev last week. 5 of the family's women and children have left the country, but most remain in the Ukrainian countryside, and they are well supplied. The men are armed and prepared to fight, and they can still hear bombs in the distance. Perhaps the most alarming situation is that of Trevor Reed, the Tehachapi High School graduate who has been in a Russian prison for more than 900 days. Reed was detained for public intoxication in August 2019, but later charged with endangering the lives of police officers, convicted and sentenced to 9 years in prison. Reed's father, Joey Reed, said his son is coughing up blood and showing signs of tuberculosis, but said Russian authorities are refusing to test him for it. Trevor also has torn cartilage in his rib cage. If there's any good news, it's that he has been transferred to a prison camp with a hospital, and after 232 days of no communication, has been permitted to call his family. His case has obviously taken on a new urgency, given increasing Russian domestic instability associated with that country's invasion of Ukraine. While the world watches the Ukrainian tragedy unfold on a grand scale, 3 Kern County families keep tabs, as best they can, on 3 very personal dramas. In Bakersfield, Robert Price, 17 News.
17 News is your local election headquarters, and the once-a-decade process of redistricting is one step closer to a conclusion at the local level. The city of Bakersfield adopted a new map last night during its 5th public hearing about redrawing council ward boundaries. 17's Moses Small has more.
Wednesday night, the Bakersfield City Council advanced map 5B, drawn by a grassroots activist organization called the Jakara Movement, as opposed to map 2C, drawn by city staffers. The Jakara Movement says its map would unite Bakersfield's Punjabi and Sikh voters in southwest Bakersfield, expanding Ward 7 west to Gosford Road, among other changes.
I'm here tonight to ask you all to adopt MAP 5B. We at the Bakersfield Sikh Women's Association have been inundated with calls and messages from members of the Sikh community. And what they are saying to us is this: don't let them split us. Our community wants to remain whole. They do not want their voice cut in half.
The Dolores Huerta Foundation supports MAP 5B, arguing the city's proposed map would violate the Voting Rights Act, depriving constitutionally protected groups like Latinos and Sikhs of the chance to elect officials of their choice.
MAP 2C disenfranchises protected people by splitting African American voting blocks between 4 wards, Punjabi between 4, and Latino spread all over 7 wards.
Generally speaking, MAP 2C would have maintained the status quo, bringing minimal changes to ward boundaries. Groups like the Dolores Huerta Foundation and the ACLU threatened to take legal action against the city if officials adopted a map with fewer than 3 majority Latino voter wards in compliance with the Voting Rights Act.
If 2C is adopted, Bakersfield will be sued, and DHF will demand 4 Latino Voting Rights Act wards.
More than 36 people spoke to the city council supporting MAP 5B, while no one came forward in favor of 2C during the public hearing. Ward 2 City Council member Andre Gonzalez spearheaded the motion to advance MAP 5B, jumping ahead of the city manager's recommendation to hold off on a vote until March 30th.
And so I'm making a motion tonight to adopt MAP 5B and only MAP 5B for the first reading.
But not everyone on the city council agreed.
And to be honest with you, I disagree with the MAP 5B. But it doesn't mean that I disagree with you as a group of people. It doesn't mean that you are any less than any other group of people in this community.
4 council members voted to adopt MAP 5B, 2 voted nay, and Ward 5 council member Bruce Freeman abstained. That means 5B is the final map under consideration by the city council. Proponents of 5B say this will give protected communities more say in who represents them in city council.
Latinos and people of color are the majority in the city of Bakersfield, so we really need a city council that is going to represent this constituency that is much more diverse, and it, will continue to diversify.
That was Moses Small reporting. MAP 5B will move forward for the next public hearing April 6th, when it will vote to officially adopt the final map. The final deadline for approval is April 17th.
5:36 is your time now in your 17 Crime Watch. Almost 8 years after a 13-year-old Delano girl was forced into an alleyway and raped while heading to school, police have announced an arrest in that case. Delano police say Rodrigo Munoz Perez remains under custody in Contra Costa County and will eventually stand trial in Kern. The incident happened in the morning of August 1st, 2014 on 8th Avenue between High and Main Streets. Perez, who was 48 years old at the time, fled, and the girl made her way to Kensington Avenue, where a Good Samaritan took her to Delano Police Station.
The suspect did not know the victim, so I don't know if this was a crime of opportunity or what, but the suspect has lived in several areas throughout California, so he may have been transient, moving from town to town.
Officers who showed up to the scene retrieved physical evidence that was linked to Perez as the suspect. Chief Tyson Davis would not specify what kind of evidence was found. The Mercury News reported Perez is facing charges including kidnapping and attempted rape. Chief Davis said there may be other victims, and he urges anyone with information to come forward. You can contact Delano PD at 721-3369.
Police are investigating a shooting that happened last night in central Bakersfield. It happened just before 8:30 at the Plaza Motel on Union Avenue near 8th Street. Police say a man was shot in front of one of the rooms. The bullet went straight through his hand. The victim was taken to the hospital. The shooter took off running from the motel. If you have any information, call police at 327-7111.
Bakersfield police say a man was shot yesterday in southeast Bakersfield. It happened in the 1800 block of Lotus Lane just after 12:30 p.m. That man suffered moderate injuries. BPD says they have no idea about the shooter at this time as the investigation's ongoing. If you have any information, call BPD.
Officials at Wasco State Prison confirmed yesterday they are investigating the death of an inmate as a homicide. According to the Department of Corrections, 59-year-old Scott Gunter was found unresponsive in his cell on Tuesday. The coroner has yet to determine a cause of death, but Gunter's cellmate, Eugene Stroud, is the suspect in this case.
Bakersfield High School was put on lockdown and Centennial High School put on lockout yesterday. It happened at BHS, prompted by a fight that broke out at a nearby gas station. BPD says the suspect was taken into custody at Beale Park. Centennial High School was placed on lockout because officers were in a foot pursuit with an alleged catalytic converter thief in the area.
In your 17 Court Watch this morning, a defense motion was granted yesterday, ordering prosecutors to turn over information they have gathered in the case against Trezell and Jacqueline West. Prosecutors say the West's youngest adopted sons, 4-year-old Orrin and 3-year-old Orson, were killed 3 months before they were reported missing. Their bodies have not been found. A prosecutor acknowledged the defense lawyers were entitled to the discovery and said they will comply with the court order to share their information with the defense. Another hearing to consider additional legal motions in the case is set for next Tuesday.
A man arrested for involvement in Monday night's shooting at Valley Plaza Mall is no longer in custody. KCSO would not clarify if 18-year-old Dejon Swisher posted bail. His scheduled court appearance yesterday was canceled. Police say Swisher and a 17-year-old boy tried to rob a 15-year-old boy and another person during a drug deal gone wrong. That other person pulled out a gun and started shooting, hitting all 3 teens. Police say the teens are expected to survive and the shooter is still on the run.
Mental health and homelessness is a big issue for state lawmakers this year. After the governor proposed his Care Court program, Republican state lawmakers yesterday presented 17 new proposals to address California's pressing homelessness crisis, including a proposal to expand who is eligible for conservatorship, which involves a court appointing someone to make health decisions for those who are not capable of doing it themselves. Another part of the Republican proposal calls for an audit of the billions in state spending on homelessness and its outcomes. It also requires the governor to put together a report on the status of existing homeless efforts.
Arvind Police Chief Edwin Brock is looking for a new job in San Diego County. Brock is one of 3 finalists for the San Diego County acting sheriff's position. He went before the San Diego County Board of Supervisors on Tuesday, where he explained he's currently Arvind's police chief. It was just last year Brock was named as Arvind's chief with a salary of $120,000. According to Brock, many of the crime problems facing Arvind are the same ones facing San Diego County.
I'm currently sitting as the chief of police in Arvind, California, and I've completed 1 year there. And I can attest that the issues are the same as far as recruiting and retention, increase in crime from various sources.
17 News tried to contact Chief Brock to get a comment on it, but so far he's not responded.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.